I was thinking about trying to take a few photos to show you the Chaos Army, and then I realized it's probably easier if I simply give you a brief tour of the hobby space and then show you the shelves where they're just hanging out. So that's what we're going to try to do here. This is one of my bedrooms that I have converted into my hobby space. We have some lovely art on the walls and then shelving all over the place. So we will go ahead and start over in this space here. This is the hobby space with my lovely little lamp that finally arrived last week. And then a couple of extra little bits of storage and illumination. We've got a number of paint brushes and more paint brushes and cutting mats and more cutting mats. Soon to be engaged projects, as well as projects that have perhaps been languishing for a fair bit of time. We'll move on then to the stack of paint. This is all Citadel paint here in its organizers by color and type. And we have our basing materials and other crafting supplies in the back. Electronic distractions or background noise as we go along. The PS3 is there predominantly to play DVDs, though it is my PS3, and that's where the PS3 library now rests. Over here we have the second half of the electronic distractions, because I have this basically piping into the television so that I can watch YouTube videos and tutorials and whatnot if the urge strikes, as well as a couple of RPG character sheets for those occasions where I am both playing online in an RPG as well as doing hobby at the same time. Down below we have our terrain. So we have at this point 3 large bins worth of terrain of various types for various factions, as well as both for AOS and 40K. Thankfully, their artistic sensibilities are reasonably parallel, so it's easy to transition from one to the other, as well as some Reaper paints, which is a different brand of paint that I use predominantly for my basing, because it's a less expensive paint, so I can go through it a little more quickly, as well as the paints I typically take with me if I'm taking hobby projects on the go. And now we'll go ahead and start with our armies. Up here on the top shelf, we have my Night Haunt collection. At least as much of it as is assembled and primed, and in some cases, actually painted. So this is definitely a work in progress. I haven't gotten nearly as far as I'd like, but I have taken a fair chunk out. I've been concentrating predominantly on the battle line units. So getting those large horde quantities done so I can then later focus on the cooler heroes and specialty units like that fellow in the back right there. Looking forward to him. So that's the Night Haunt. Go ahead and kill the light there. Moving on, we're going to skip a level because this is actually completed. This is all Skaven. So Skaven are my first love. They are why I got into the hobby painting in the first place, and I always look forward to painting more little rats. I've got a fair amount done at this point, I would say, but that's not to say I don't have more. In fact, I think I have as much as you see here still to be built and primed and painted, as you may attest by the shelf above it. We have endless spells here, as well as the Underworld's Warband, and then a hero here, as well as Storm Fiends and Rat Ogres in the back. Yes, looking forward to getting those guys done. With any luck, we'll see some new Rat Ogre sculpts now that they're done making us happy with Seraphon units. Down below here, we finally have the Chaos Miscreants that are known as the Sun-Cursed. And this collection, as I stated in the text, in our little text chat, is predominantly built of just leftovers, things that are Chaos Grand Alliance of various sub-factions that I don't have any inkling or real intention of building into full-blown armies on their own. And so I simply field them under the Grand Alliance rules from 2nd edition, and it still works just fine in 3rd edition. I'm kind of I'm cornered a little bit when it comes to my battle traits and whatnot, and by and large the army tends to get its teeth kicked in by those armies that actually have rules for 3rd edition, but they play just fine. And subsequently I've had a lot of fun with them regardless of their I think at this point they're like, I don't know, 2 and 10 on their on their fight record. You'll also notice that we still have a few here that are not painted. Those are waiting to basically fill out certain units that are under strength, and also some fun kit bashes that I've incorporated from some extra bits. So that is the Sun-Cursed, and as you see, like I said, they are comprised of all manner of factions under Chaos, with the exception of Nurgle. There are no Nurgle yet. They do not stink. They are just very dusty. And then finally down here, we have the beginnings of my Sylvaneth army. So I've got all of the Dryads built from the start collect. I have the entire start collecting box done. I still have a couple of battle boxes worth of stuff that I need to put together, as well as a couple of just loose kits that I've picked up over the years that are in the Closet of Shame, which I will unabashedly show you in a moment. I'm particularly happy with this guy. I'm actually going to pick him up. So this guy here is actually from Blood Bowl, but I've taken him and I'm going to use him as an alternate model of a branch witch. So I'm going to have 2 branch witches, and one of them is going to be this haunted tree dude. He's got a mouthful of skulls. I don't know if you can actually see that in there. And then he's got some skulls hanging off of the branch bits in his hair. He's a grody dude. He's very cool. I also have this guy who's just kind of hanging out. He has no business being down here. He should be on a different plinth, but I love this sculpt. This is perhaps one of my favorite sculpts that Games Workshop has done. See if I can actually get a focus on it. There. This guy is from the Flesh Eater Courts. He's what's known as an Abhorrent Ghoul King, or Abhorrent Archregent. That's the name. And my goodness, I love this sculpt. This guy just screams Castlevania. So yeah, I had to pick this up. He's going to go in my Castlevania army, which I'll talk about briefly in a moment. All right, so that's the first little chunk of armies. Now we're going to move on to the largest collection of a faction I have. These are my Stormcast Eternals. Over here, we've got a section that is unpainted. These are my evocators, so these are my battle wizards. Then we have Vanguard Hunters, a whole slew of Gryph-hounds. We have some Castigators in the back, hanging out with their big, heavy-duty crossbows. We have our Lord Celestant on Dracoth. We have a number of cool heroes on foot, as well as some heroes on foot behind that are unpainted, working on those. A fair number of them are kit bashed as well, like that dude with the horn. I made him. He doesn't actually exist as a kit, but he's going to be my Knight Heraldor. So he plays some mad dudes on that horn of his. Some more heroes. There's a kit bashed Knight Vexilor with his cool banner. There is the centerpiece of this army, thanks to Phil. My goodness, yes, my Drakesworn Templar, which I am very proud of and forever will be grateful to Phil for. We've got what will most likely be a very familiar warband here, Stormsire's Cursebreakers, as well as Steelheart's Champions. And then behind them, we have a slew of 10 Liberators with different kind of kits. We've got for example, we've got a dude with the two-handed sword, and we got a dude that's dual-wielding there. Then we have 5 Paladin Protectors. See if I can avoid the shadow here. There they are. These guys are awesome. They are heavy infantry that just hit like a truck. And then in the back here, we have our fusillade, our artillery units. So these are the Celestar Ballistae. Each of them has a firing crew of 2, and then you've got this Lord Ordinator that's telling them to shoot better. And then atop here, we have what I have yet, the main glut of what I have yet to paint. A whole slew of heroes, this whole big blob of mounted dudes. The two in front are both heroes. One's a Lord Aquilor, the other is a Lord Arcanum on Griff Charger. And then you've got 3 Paladors there. We got a string of the Prosecutors, the big crazy winged guys. This is all the stuff from the Dominion box. So this is the new 3rd edition stuff. This is Zandire's Truth Seekers, which Tim should recognize, and Coley as well. And then in the back, we have Indrasta, who is yet to be painted up. And down below here, we have Spice Marines. So the predominance of this is actually the Dark Imperium box set, which was the 8th edition starter box. And this is the, most of this is basically the Space Marine contingent of that. There's a couple of extra intercessors, which are your mainline infantry dudes back there. But yeah, this is my custom chapter of Space Marines. I'm particularly proud of the banner there. First time I really tried tackling transfers on a model. And then there's a whole glut of Space Marines that have yet to be painted. These guys are predominantly from the Indomitus box, which came out, is it a couple years back now? My goodness. And then over here we have the beginnings of what's going to be my Adeptus Mechanicus troop. They've been mildly kit bashed. You'll see this guy up front almost looks kind of like he's got a Skeksis head. And then this fat guy over here is looking a little weird as well. And that's kind of tied into the overall design I'm working with for the army. All right, moving on down. Our next chunk is Death Guard. So this is the other half of the Dark Imperium box set. This is all your Chaos Marines, but Nurgle. So they're all gribbly and gross and pussy and nasty and farty and stinky. And they're great fun to play. They can take a real beating, which is nice because it allows me to field an army that can just play as a punching bag to whatever my buddies want to bring to the table so they can practice their lists. And these guys will stick around long enough in a given game where my opponent can actually play through the full kind of ebb and flow of a game match. And then next to them, we have the beginnings of my Necron forces. So the thoroughly enjoy Necrons. They were kind of my first pick whenever Alan first introduced me to the idea of 40K way back in college. These were the guys that I was interested in. And it's great to finally get a chance to start building them out. So I've got a big blob of your basic infantry, as well as 2 of the kind of sub-commanders. These are kind of the lowest tier leaders that you can field in an army. So I've got those guys for fire control and then big blob. So I can technically field a force right now, but I don't have a lot of really special bells and whistles. I don't have any of the really cool heroes done yet. That's where these guys come in. And I've got a fair slew of them, slew of these guys as well in the Closet of Shame, which we'll get to. All right, next down, we're making a transition back to the Mortal Realms, and now we're dealing with orcs. So this is going to be my Great Wah. This is going to be a combination of Cruel Boys and Iron Jaws, as well as 1 or 2 extra little bits of Gloomspite Gits, because I want to add some Troggoths to it. The whole idea being that the army is kind of this troglodytic, cave-dwelling strain of Auric with almost albino flesh tones and solid black shiny eyes like sharks. So they're going to be a great deal of fun to paint up. And then down here on the bottom shelf here, we have first a collection of all of the endless spells from the Blind Portents box. I only have 2 more spells left to paint from this box. I've been able to kind of hammer these out over the last couple years, essentially. Anytime I'm on the road or if I'm going to go visit somebody and do some hobbying away from my station, I usually grab 1 or 2 of these guys and work on them because it's a great little project that you can bash out quickly. And since it's kind of agnostic regarding any army, I don't have to worry about like color keying their bases or anything like that to an existing army. They can just kind of be their own thing. And then, of course, we also have kind of my my undetached Shadespire or Warhammer Underworld's warbands as they stand. So these right here are eventually probably going to be tied into my Castlevania army, which I don't have yet. So the front rank looks to be my Flesh Eater Courts with their creepy, their creepy Morlock color scheme from the Time Machine. Then I've got the Sepulchral Guard in the back, some of the best skeleton sculpts that Games Workshop's ever done. And then in the very back, I've got my most recent project finished, which are the Osric Bone Reapers. Over here, we've got my first take on Iron Skull's Boys. You saw previously my updated one that can be folded into the army I'm building. These guys are on their own. These guys I painted up before I had a notion to do an Auric army. So they are in classic Iron Jaws colors of the Iron Suns. The bright yellow and the black, very much like just angry green bumblebee transformers. And then there's these guys, which it was a very fun experiment. I wanted to do something where it looked like these particular Stormcasts had been stuck in the Night Vaults long enough to basically be cursed and kind of transmuted into these stained glass warriors, which was very fun to kind of play with. And of course, the central figure I did some kit bashing on to replace her shield with her book of punishments and judgments. And I switched out the fellow's weapons for axes to make them slightly different from the other Sacrosanct dudes. So that's what I've got predominantly on my collection of shelves. But then there's the closet of shame. And in here, we have all kinds of stuff. So we'll go ahead and start with stuff over here. Here are all of my other Underworld's warbands that are awaiting paint. All of these guys are primed, and they're just waiting for their opportunity to shine. Typically, I'll grab an Underworld's warband in between larger projects or big batch paints that are tied to established armies. These guys, by and large, are tied to one of my projects. I've gotten a little more picky recently in only purchasing warbands that I can fold into a pre-existing project. It's a way to kind of throttle my hobby a little bit. We got a couple of extra little pieces here, some pieces of terrain, as well as a couple of the Tzeentchian Endless Spells that I picked up. The next shelf down is going to be all of my woods, my wild woods. Tim, take note. You're going to enjoy painting these, and you're not going to enjoy painting these. They end up being a little fiddly. Specifically, the leaves are rather fiddly in getting them affixed. But they are a dry brusher's dream, so have fun. And we have our last two endless spells here that still need to be painted, so we will be getting to them eventually. And then we have our extraneous elements. These are all, with few exceptions, actually full. These are boxes that contain plastic that need to be put together, as is this bottom shelf here, and the majority of this middle shelf. This shelf is all hobby supplies and other things that I've just kind of had a notion of at a moment where I thought that could actually be used or be handy, or maybe I shouldn't throw that away. I might be able to use that specifically for ideas for like terrain or basing or things like that. Just kind of spare, I might need it later kind of things that I stuff on this shelf. And then we have the tower. So we have Loon Curse, which is basically a box of my extra Sylvaneth stuff. Echoes of Doom, which is Sylvaneth and rats, my scavens. Curse City, which I'm really looking forward to. It's basically kind of play against the game. Hero, a bunch of heroes basically fighting off monsters. It's a dungeon delve in a box. And all of the monsters in it are themed towards essentially my Castlevania army. So this is going to be the core of my Castlevania army, and it gets to be a board game as well. And then we just kind of pan up. These are all the other extra bits that I have picked up over the years that are tied to projects or ideas. Some of them are tied to 40K stuff, like what you see on the left. Predominantly, and then some, as you see on the right, is tied to AOS. So at the end of the day, that's a tour of all my hobby space. Oh, and then there's this bit here. These are things that are waiting to be primed. So we have some lovely terrain that Tom and Phoebe bought for me for Christmas, which is waiting for the bite of primer. We have our two big orky monsters there, which Phil bought me for Christmas, which was lovely. We have a new kit-bashed vampire lord that I just finished gluing together last night, and he's going to be a lot of fun. I've got an orc war chanter, so he's my second one, so now I'm going to be able to field two, which is wonderful. A new Stormcast hero to add to the glut of Stormcast heroes on foot that I have. And then we got another guy. He goes on this guy's saddle, so I kept him separate for the sake of painting sanity. And then I've got another one of these evil Nurgly Pac-Man tanks to add to my Death Guard. And then back here, go ahead and remove that. Back here, I have my dragons. Tim bought me the Drake Guard for Christmas this last year. Or not, was it this year? I think it was the year before. And I finally got these guys put together and put into their sub-assembly. So everything's masked off and good for the primer. I just need to wait for a warm day. So I think that's everything. I know this is just an obnoxiously long video at this point. I have no idea if I'll be able to actually post it, but we shall see.